Fandom, how's it going? Today we are reviewing Daredevil, The Man Without Fear by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. If you've read anything by Frank Miller, you know the guy in his prime was one of the best of the best. We're talking about books like Batman Year One, Dark Knight Returns, Ronin, Sin City, all known today as classic stuff, especially Batman Year One. And Batman Year One is held as the quintessential origin story of the Dark Knight himself. And to some people, it is the best origin story of a comic book character that's ever been told. However, I am of the opinion, and I think if you look up some interviews and things like that, you'll be of the same opinion, that Frank Miller considers this his best origin story. Basically, the general story of this is that it follows Matt Murdock as a kid, and you see him go through college, you see him go through his adult life, and you see him start out as Daredevil. Yes, you do get the iconic black suit now that was the inspiration for the black suit in the TV show. It's all here. Now, if you are looking for the red suit in this series, it's not in this. He doesn't get the red suit until literally like the last panel of this book. So I mentioned that you get a glimpse of what Matt's home life is like and what it's like for him to grow up in Hell's Kitchen. And I think that was probably the most interesting part of the story, because we've seen kind of in the TV shows and in the comics and stuff like that, yeah, Matt Murdock kind of had a tough upbringing, but you really see it here, how he is kind of goaded in by the other kids as saying, "Oh man, Matt, you could do anything, you're awesome. We want you to steal this baton from this cop. Go and take it." He does it, and that's how he gets the nickname Daredevil. And it's kind of a really smart way for Frank Miller to kind of tie in, yeah, this is how Matt Murdock got the nickname Daredevil and how it carried on with him until he was an adult and through law school. It should also be mentioned that this technically isn't just the origin of Daredevil himself. This is also kind of the origin of when Daredevil met Elektra, when he first met Foggy, and Kingpin coming up into the crime scene, because at the start of this story, Kingpin is basically just this bouncer, and then you see him rise up to power and how he takes control of the area and how he uses his flunkies to do his work and how he starts selling drugs and things like that. And it's a really cool examination of the character, even though he's only in a few panels of this. Seriously, I would have loved to have seen more Kingpin in this story. One of the interesting things about this is that Frank Miller doesn't outright say that Matt Murdock has superpowers in this story. He kind of hints at it through Matt's abilities and what he does with the acrobatics and how he's able to read kind of like the lettering of a newspaper or something like that. But you don't really get the sense that Matt has any super extrasensory abilities, because Frank Miller doesn't really show that or have John Romita show that in the art. And I thought, well, that's an interesting way to go about it, but I'm always a sucker for those panels where you see kind of the radar sense and how Matt perceives everything around him. And I was like, ah, come on. I really would have liked to have seen that in there, but hey, not a real killer for the story. So let's talk about the art for a minute in this bad boy, because the art on this is John Romita Jr. at his prime. If you're not a fan of the stuff he's doing recently, you need to pick this up, because I'm not too crazy about his Superman run recently with Jeff Johns. I thought the art was okay. It's not bad, but the anatomy for me just did not work in a Superman story. This, on the other hand, is just fantastic all the way through. I'm just going to go outright and say it. John Romita Jr. draws the ultimate Kingpin, outside of maybe Alex Maleev and Brian Michael Bendis' interpretation of the character. But oh my gosh, he's intimidating in this series. There's this panel where Kingpin's just laying his hands on top of his mob boss's head, and he just clasps them, and you're like, this is not going to end well for this guy, because they're just these huge ham hocks of a hand, and you're just like, oh my god, this guy's about to get his head torn off. It is awesome. It is intimidating, and the Kingpin here is the best interpretation I've ever seen of him, and I wanted so much more of him, like I said in the beginning of this video. Being that Daredevil is a street-level character, you kind of have to capture the fight scenes, or else it really doesn't work as a Daredevil story. And in that front, John Romita Jr. just absolutely nails it. You feel every punch, you feel every kick, you feel Matt Murdock as he's just beating the living hell out of all the characters that are around him, and you love every second of it. Each panel is fluid, each panel is drawn to perfection, colors are done very well, and I really wish John Romita Jr. kept up with this style, because in recent years it seems like he's evolved, but he's evolved into a style that I really do not like as much as I like in this. I think it goes without saying at this point that if you've never read a Daredevil story, this is the perfect jumping on point. You get the origin of the character, you get introduced to Stick, you get introduced to Elektra, you get introduced to Kingpin, Foggy, you see what happens to his father, you see how he was blinded. It's all in here in 5 issues, and it is a work of art that I am telling you right now. If you are a Daredevil fan, or if you are even curious about the character, now that the Netflix series is coming up this weekend, this is the story to pick up. You can pick it up for about 20 bucks. And in the back of this, it even includes some sketches the conversation that Frank Miller had with John Romita Jr. Pitching him the story, and the script detail for the first few pages of this. So, very good pickup. If this is your first time checking out this video, I do weekly reviews of comic books, hardcovers, trade paperbacks, and all that good stuff. Check out the links down below in my description. Follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. I do Twitch streaming on Saturday. Also, check that out as well. You guys are awesome as always. And I'm going to ask you a question. What is your favorite Daredevil story if you have one? And what's your favorite moment? So, let me know. Comment, subscribe. You guys are awesome as always. Bye.